So I will prepare for starting. And okay, so now I think we start now.
Yep.
Hello. We are very honored to introduce Professor Zlatko Labunjiza. He is a former Prime Minister of Bosnia-Herzegovina and leaders of Bosnia-Herzegovina many years. And you know about him already by bio I sent you. And we only would like to say something more. That is, Prime Minister Zlatko Labunjiza is deeply involved with the Michael Dukakis Institute and AI Society Initiative. He is a mentor of AIWS.net, and he is a co-author of the social contract for the IH, and also he is a member board of leaders of AIWS City and member of the History of AI Initiative of Michael Dukakis Institute. And now he deeply involved, contribute to build AI International Accord with the experience and vision from a Prime Minister in Europe. He is a great contribution for AI International Accord. And today we are very honored to have Prime Minister Zlatko Labunjiza join and give lecture for the ETU AIWS Leadership Master Degree Program. And we hope and we believe we have great time, great lecture, and you can learn a lot with Prime Minister Labunjiza. And thank you, Prime Minister Labunjiza, for your support and help in our lecture today. And we are honored to introduce now, please.
Thank you, Tuan, my dear friend. I see most of you, and I hope that you see me well. And I will today talk, as Tuan was asking me, about putting focus on artificial intelligence international accord. What did we do with it? Where are we, and what do we plan to do? But I will put it in the perspective of social contract for the age of artificial intelligence. How do we get from social contract to AI international accord? And basically speaking, to see in what is the big picture in context of leadership challenges. How we will actually put this in a framework of necessity for fast growing need for leading change in the age of sustainable development and artificial intelligence. Because basically speaking, we are entering the age which is kind of competing with the name. Is it going to be age of sustained development or age of artificial intelligence? Or how do we go through this overall challenges that we confronted all as a world with Corona? And how we will basically speaking lead the change in something which can be seen as a post-Corona era and new normal, with the help of artificial intelligence and getting back to the sustainable development. So I'll start with the let's say personal story. How did I get here? Why I like this group so much? I'm a little bit partial because I mean I'm first generation of computer scientists of electrical engineering school at my university in Sarajevo back in early 70s. And basically speaking, what I was doing for 25 years, for more than, I don't know, almost 20 years, I was focused on computer science and on engineering issues. I moved a lot of your professors probably from engineering, computer science, from being, let's say, getting my degrees in how to create a box, which was called computer and still is, to the what to do with it, how to put it in certain context. And that's the reason why after half of my previous life spent behind me, when I was 35 years old, I decided to try to change the world, try to change the environment, my small world in which I live, as a computer scientist who moved in political arena, having in mind that technology is changing us so much that we have to be aware of the bigger context than technology itself. Sometimes we can today compare the artificial intelligence. I like to make comparison of artificial intelligence with atomic energy or with the war in certain contexts. There is old saying that says wars are so important and so complex things and so important things that we should not leave them to the generals. The same thing is happening. What happened with atomic energy? Basically speaking, atomic energy was the greatest invention. Sometimes we can today compare the. Do I hear someone? Okay, I thought I had someone else was making credit, but let me continue. So, the atomic energy was basically speaking back in the 40s, 50s, defined by scientists, by atomic energy scientists. But it went out of the hands of the scientists that created it. We have the similar pattern with artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is becoming so important and so big issue that it is now has to be the issue, the challenge, the something which we have to not involve only the people who are able to make it, but people who will live with it. So let me say a few words. Where are we today, and what are the next global challenges, like climate change, like pandemic, like sustainable development, finally artificial intelligence. So how did we get to the issue of social contract, and how from the issue of social contract in the age of artificial intelligence, we are moving to artificial intelligence accord? How we can basically move from some kind of institutions that exist to institutions that will be also in a function of artificial intelligence. And in a system where you have not stable institutions, where you have no legal framework, where you don't have consensus about how the thing's supposed to be running, then the role of leadership is becoming more and more important. At the same time, we are witnessing something which is called as a changing nature of economy, or changing nature of capitalism. I'll touch base with that because we had excellent discussions under the umbrella of AIWS on a people-centered economy. One of the major, let's say, movements that is in front of us as a result of changes in technology. Economy itself is significantly changing. Capitalism, as I said, is significantly changing. So, at the same time, I'll try to just share with you some thoughts about how we can use this multi-stakeholder approach that we're talking about. How we can be convincing stakeholders to lead the changes and the time that is in front of us. So I'll start, so to speak, with why. Because basically speaking, today, the overall economy and overall global sphere is, let's say, organized. We can put it along the four pillars. First pillar we can call it prosperity. Economy itself, which is how do we create bigger GDP? How do we manage with financial capital? The second element that today we're talking about is planet. Planet, or how do we basically save the natural capital? How do we actually manage the planet to be saved? Not because we want to save the planet, because planet will be okay if we are not around. So how do we save ourselves? By saving the planet. And people is the third pillar. People in sense of education and skills, and social capital in the broad sense of the meaning. And we come to the fourth pillar, which is basically speaking institutional context, or we can call it principles. Principles around which the institutions should be made on. Let me give some data, some facts, relevant facts for saying where we are. There is last month there was an interesting 16th edition of Global Risk report made by World Economic Forum, which is really credible, and let's say for 16 years going on, report every year in the beginning of the year. And it's very interesting that when you take a look at global risk horizon, I mean, this year asked what do you think as a key leaders of the globe, more than 10,000 people all over the world, what are the risks that you are forecasting that will become a critical threat to the world? The two things that were topping agenda were infectious diseases and the livelihood crisis. That's obvious because of pandemic. The third one is somewhat an issue that was for years the top of the global risk report. It was extreme weather events. But the number fourth and number fifth biggest threat is cyber security failure and digital inequality. So if we carve out those two first things that are related with pandemia, which we are all occupied with normally, if we carve out the extreme weather events, which we are all afraid of, there is consensus around the globe that basically speaking, out of 5 top risks, the 2 top risks are coming from something which is related with information technology, and basically speaking in the end with artificial intelligence. So when it is asked what are the top risks in sense of likelihood, basically speaking, that will happen. Even infectious diseases are not the top one. The world is first 3 things are related with extreme weather, with climate action's failure, and with human and environmental damage. And then biodiversity loss. So out of 5, in sense of likelihood, top decision makers all over the world are thinking that out of 5, 4 are related to climate change. But then again, digital power concentration and digital inequality are coming on the top list in positioned as a number 6 and number 7 as a likelihood risk. So what is basically speaking, there's great global awareness that we are getting into the very dangerous area thanks to the unmanaging technology. And at the same time, parallel track with technology, we have, as I said, we have few layers of significant changes in the economic sphere. Right now we're witnessing the recreation or reimagining or reinventing something which is called capitalism. One is, again, we're coming back to the circular economy, which is based theoretically in Boulding and others from 50 years ago, which is practically saying that we have to get out of the usual economic system, which we have a linear growth, having in mind that the capacity of the planet is unlimited. Now we are talking about circular economy, and we are talking about the changes of the very nature of the economy, and the very changing nature of the economy is possible because, again, of information technologies, and especially because of artificial intelligence. Shared value, the second concept of changing the economy that Michael Porter and Kramer started like 10 years ago. We're talking about shared value, in which, basically speaking, economy has to be, and business has to be focused not only on business, but has to be focused on sharing the value with others. That came to as a root of that economic thinking. We have something which was last year in Davos, let's say formalized by Klaus Schwab, which is called stakeholder capitalism, which is basically speaking along the lines of Joe Stiglitz, former chief economist of the World Bank and Nobel Prize economist, who actually are moving from the fact that getting out of the old Friedman for decades unquestionable theory that capitalism is basically speaking based on the fact that shareholders have to be pleased, and that's it. The business of business is to the business, and the business of government is to get out of the business. Then the business of business is to grow. And as business grows, everyone will be happy. Stakeholder capitalism is completely paradigm shift, new paradigm shift, going in completely different direction, which is saying, basically speaking, that you have to take care of all stakeholders of the businesses, from employees to your consumers, of course, having in mind your shareholders, but governments, local communities, and so on. And finally, we have people-centered economy that our dear friend Vint Cerf, and Tuan's good friend, actually is the leader of. Vint Cerf, who is known as the father of internet, and who is right now the chief evangelist and vice president of Google, actually dealing with these issues. And he's actually the pioneer, and we were privileged in AIWS to be having discussions and debates about how to move forward in so-called people-centered economy. All these four elements are possible only because of the development of technology, information and communication technology, and ultimately artificial intelligence that we are talking about. So what we today witness in the world is that we have the growth of economy, growth of technology, and we have extremely bigger power than we ever had in the history of the mankind. At the same time, the speed and scale of change is growing so much. So that's the reason why we are coming to the issue in which we are talking about where do we go. Now, I'm sure you're familiar as a young computer scientist, like I was privileged to be a long time ago, in last millennium. I almost said billion years ago, but I can say in previous package of 1,000 years, when I was doing what you're doing today, you're very familiar with the fact that, I'll just give one as a little example, predictions by some people like Masayoshi Son, the guy who is known as one of the biggest venture capitalists for new technologies, who is very much, I was with him 2 years ago in one event, when I asked him, what do you think, where do we go with artificial intelligence? What will happen in the next 2-3 years? Because he was on top of the biggest artificial intelligence venture capital projects. And he said, I cannot tell you where we're going to be in 1 or 2 years, but I can tell you where we're going to be in 10 or 20 years. I said, okay. So how do you call that period of 10 or 20 years? What will happen? He said, in 10 or 20 years, he used the formula 10, 1, 10, 1 time. We will be living in 10,000, 1 million, 10 billion, and 1 trillion times. I said, what is that? I said, well, artificial intelligence, superintelligence in a period of 10, 20 years will come to the IQ that is compared with 10,000K. I said, what is that? He said, I had no clue. What is that? I mean, but since Einstein didn't hit 200, I mean, we may have the artificial intelligence that will hit 10,000K. 1 million processing power, since Moore's law is going to be applicable for a while, more or less, we can have the processing power be 1 million times bigger. So we are coming to the part in which we are comparing the chip with the capacity, hardware capacity of the human brain. 10 billion, well, 10 billion robots driven by artificial intelligence, which means that there will be more than us, machines, artificial intelligence, moving robots. That will be. And finally, 1 trillion, at least 1 trillion Internet of Things. Internet of Things, which means that basically speaking, every one of us will be connected to now we are probably connected with this computer or with phone or smartphone or whatever. But I mean, we will have obviously. So we are going into the area in which we have to do something. I'll go back 4 years, back in 2017. And that's why I was very interested when Tuan and our friends were started talking about social contract for the age of artificial intelligence, when we basically speaking started talking about where do we go? And when I became very much interested in the social contract and the work of artificial intelligence for society. Back 5 years ago, I was involved in some discussion about something which is called Asilomar principles. Asilomar, maybe you know, I mean, Asilomar principles. To me, I mean, when I heard Asilomar principles 5-6 years ago, that people were talking about it, people from Elon Musk to Stephen Hawking at that time, and I thought there was something similar to Isaac Asimov, but then I realized that Asilomar is a little place near the Bay Area in San Francisco where actually people convene. And basically speaking, we produced a paper called under umbrella of Future of Life Institute, something which is called Asilomar Principles, which is talking about call for more robust and beneficiary artificial intelligence. That's the reason why I'm so much let's say, enthusiastic about what we are doing right now and what we are hopefully be doing in the future. But some of our principles are talking about three sets of issues. One is research issues, which is calling what should be the research goals, about research funding, about science policy links, about research culture, race avoidance. And then the second set is ethics and values. We're talking about the safety, about responsibility, about shared benefits, about the artificial intelligence arms race, and so on. And finally, we define some long-term issues from capability caution to common good. How do we get there? You can find, I think, today, if you go on the Future of Life Institute, just before this meeting, I just checked, there's about almost 1,800 of us signed coming from artificial intelligence, robotics, and computer science area, and about almost 4,000 of us that are, let's say, others. When I was asked where I was used, they said you are and others in computer sciences. So, I was one of the first signatories, but one of the first signatories was Elon Musk and Stephen Hawking. And Stephen Hawking was when we talked about artificial intelligence, I strongly recommend you his last book about 10 answers for the big questions, in which one of the chapters was devoted to artificial intelligence, in which encapsulatedly speaking, he's saying that with artificial intelligence, if it does not become our last invention, we will be living in a much more prosperous world. So we have to be sure that it is not our last invention. And as he said, artificial intelligence is good as far as it has the same goals like we do. So it's not about technology, it's about the goals. It's about goals, and what are the goals, and actually who make the goals. Because we're entering a time in which, basically speaking, it is possible that for the first time in the history of the mankind, something that we create makes goals. Every other thing is a tool, and tool does not have a goal. Of course, we can say, technically speaking, that, for example, drone may have a goal, or missile can have a goal, because it chases the let's say, the heat of the airplane or something like it. But this is the goal that we gave it. So basically speaking, no technology was making goals before the artificial intelligence time and the age in which we are living. So having said so, we came to and you're familiar, Tuan told me, with social contract for the AI age that we launched back in September last year. And that concept of social contract is designed to establish a common understanding of policy and practices, anchoring in the general principles to help maximize the good and minimize the bad, which is associated with artificial intelligence. You're also familiar with the fact that the social contract is something which is derived in 18th century concepts of social contract as agreement among the members of society to cooperate of social benefit. So social contract for the age of IE is focused, basically speaking, on conditions of the 21st century. Social contract in 18th century resulted as a concept based on the foundations and fundamentals of Renaissance and Enlightenment time, in which, basically speaking, the science exploded in a wave that it was unprecedented until recently. Of course, our social contract, as we define it, is responsible to it is response to artificial intelligence, it is response to big data, and it is a response to Internet of Things and high-speed computation. So you are familiar with the fact that we have over there the objectives, we define the principles, we define commitments of stakeholders as a multi-stakeholder principle, because the social contract depends on individuals, depends on the groups, depends, of course, of the governments, but also depends on the business entities and civil society, and especially artificial intelligence, let's say, community or systems, as we call it. We also define something which is called, which the name is a set of steps. How we, practically speaking, what are the strategies and goals that we have to think about, from scientific research and funding to sustainable development, underlying sustainable development over time, and inclusive growth. Because inclusive growth is one of the major preconditions for the growth. Because without inclusive growth, we are having divisions which will be actually more damaging and can jeopardize our common future and existence. Of course, strategies have to be dealing with skills, with education and talent development, and you are right now going through this in a program as a university. We also have to talk about how the public sector is going to adopt this. It is important issue is transparency, especially accountability. Ethics, values, and inclusion, maybe, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the most relevant things. And of course, ultimately, we have to come to the hardware, which is digital and data infrastructure. So implementation can be of the social contract has to be implemented through different things. First thing is something which we call code of ethics for artificial intelligence developers and artificial intelligence users. So the promulgation of code of ethics is one of the biggest challenges for all of us, especially the code of ethics that will be treated as universal convention of human rights. Because if code, we all know that United Nations adopted as a global acceptance something which is called United Nations Declarations of Human Rights. And no one is questioning about it. The question is how we can have something like that for the code of ethics for artificial intelligence. What we are talking right now is about how to create a system to monitor and to evaluate not only governments but companies and individuals, having in mind that those players have to be monitored in different ways. Recognition of the social contract by the United Nations is for one of the next steps, but in order to do so, we have to be having that accept, because the United Nations is just as strong as the member states. So that's the reason why we have to talk about social contract, how to let's say make that acceptable for the governments, for the companies, and international artificial intelligence community in general. We're talking about also how we can, and that's where artificial intelligence international court comes. We're talking about the establishment of some kind of United Nations Convention on artificial intelligence that will be obligatory for governments, and not only governments, but if the governments, then everything will go much easier, to comply with international rules and norms to protect rights in the age of artificial intelligence. And finally, what I see as a very important issue is development of something which we call Democratic Alliance for Digital Governance as the global authority which will be enforcing the social contract of artificial intelligence. One of our, let's say, very concrete favorite projects is the creation of Artificial Intelligence for Society City, which is all digital, virtually based on the standard and norms of the social contract for the age of artificial intelligence, which is also based on so-called people-centered economy that I was referring to in SERF, or some people call trustworthy economy, and which is nested in artificial intelligence government and intellectual society, thoughtful civil society. So basically speaking, these are the main aspects of social contract, which we are entering into the Artificial Intelligence International Accord. Many segments of international community has already begun to respond to the serious challenges that are posted by cyber access, by big data, by technological development, and various uses of all forms of so-called virtual communication and exchange. I'll start with two, let's say, documents or set of documents. Among the most one is response to the so-called Budapest Convention on Cybercrime, which is adopted back in 2001, in November 2001. It is called Budapest Convention, regardless of the fact that it was adopted by Council of Europe, which is basically speaking institution placed in Strasbourg. But at that time, Secretary General of Council of Europe was Hungarian, and he was, of course, very enthusiastic about it. And he asked his government to host that event under the umbrella of Council of Europe, which is called Budapest Convention of Cybercrime. That Budapest Convention is basically speaking later on has observers, which is not only a European thing. Observers in Budapest Convention are from Australia to United States or Japan or Canada or some other some countries from Africa, some countries from Middle East, some countries from South America and so on. But the next big set, which is now under construction, are the set of so-called European Union general directives. I'll just name a few of them. First one is European Commission Artificial Intelligence Strategy with so-called human-centric approach, similar to what we talk about human-centered economy, as I mentioned, which is basically speaking a human-centric approach, which is respecting European Union values and principles. And that was the first big document that was adopted back in 2018. Then we had the European Commission guidelines on ethics in artificial intelligence, which was adopted 2019. And then last year we had the European Commission white paper, which was adopting a unified European approach and setting a stage for legislative proposals along the lines which our accord is. And that is basically speaking, saying that we are on an edge of going into a process of creating and adopting and implementing and following, accepting specific policies that will protect the integrity of information and values that support that integrity. Today, if we talk about today as March 2021, a little attention has been paid to the challenges that are surrounding the development and application of artificial intelligence, and even less to the need for coordinated policy and something which we could call coordinated, especially not only coordinated policies, but coordinated institutional responses, including the establishment of new institutions, including the re-engineering of the current institutions in light of artificial intelligence. The rates of change in artificial intelligence innovation and application far exceed our ability to fully appreciate the potentials of threat in area that remains beyond the scope of international management. If we can let's say, if we can take a look at the major driving forces, we can say, okay, one is economy, one is technology, and one is society. So what we can see is those three areas. We are all changing. They're all evolving. So we are evolving. Technology is changing. Technology is evolving. Economy is changing and evolving, getting stronger. Technology is getting stronger. Societies are evolving, getting better organized, and people as human beings are evolving. So those four elements, us as individuals, us as a society, us as a economy as creators, and us as technology creators, we are basically speaking changing in different speeds. And that is the problem. 1,000 years, a few thousand years ago, or 200 years ago, these things were not changing so fast. 10 years ago, they were not changing so fast. But today, what we have technology that is going with the speed of light. Changes in technology are going with the speed of light. Economy is growing. Global economy in the last 40 years grew, averagely speaking, 4% a year. So basically speaking, we are, since you were born, most of you, average one of you was born, today the globe is maybe 3 times more powerful economically speaking than at that time. Technologically speaking, we are thousands of times, maybe even millions in some aspects, stronger than at that time. When it comes as a society, we didn't move so much. We still have a lot of conflicts around the world, interstate, in between states. Big cold wars are now getting replaced with maybe some kind of new hybrid conflicts, or as some people say, Cold War is now getting replaced with the Cold War, whether we are making a war by doing better codes and coding better, programming better, having better technology. But as individuals, we did not change so much. As my dear friend Jeffrey Sachs, who is special advisor for Third Secretary General on United Nations for Sustained Development, one of the creators of Millennium Goals and Sustained Development Goals and Agenda 2030, a long time ago in his book, I think, Global Wealth, there was one very good line that we are living, and today that line is even more relevant. They were saying we are living in time which is bizarre combination of Stone Age emotions, medieval age beliefs, and almost godlike technologies. So basically speaking, as individuals, we didn't go much further away from Stone Age. Hate and love, individual, let's say, our internal feelings, greed, envy, ready to love and ready to hate, hasn't changed significantly since Stone Age. Of course, we evolved. But as a society, we lived in medieval age beliefs. We are organized almost similarly in the last 200-300 years. But when it comes to technology, we almost are playing something which is higher force than ourselves. And basically speaking, we talk about artificial intelligence, that would be the first thing that is more complex than ourselves. So I strongly suggest you to go through some of the books, let's say, of Harari books on Homo Deus, or Dual Enlightenment Now of Thomas Piketty, books that are actually opening you as engineering mind, your engineering mind opening to more social mind, to understand, basically speaking, where we're heading in the bigger picture. So what we are talking when it comes to artificial intelligence and national accord, we established a panel which is defined very clear purpose of artificial intelligence international accord, define the scope and the concept and the content of it. Then we define the process toward artificial intelligence international accord. How we'll get there, how do we do reviews and revisions and refinement, how do we do it from local level to national, regional, and international level, and how to include as many stakeholders as possible. We're talking about endorsement and support from initial group to how we can have endorsement or support of European Union, of OECD countries, or United Nations, and finally of Russia and China. Because without endorsement of all those players, we are actually in a lost battle, all of us. And finally, we're talking about, we define host institution, which is of course Boston Global Forum and Michael Dukakis Institute. We have partners. We have a defined very clear timeline events by the end of this year. We established leadership under Michael Dukakis and Vaira Freiberga, president of World Leadership Alliance. We established Artificial Intelligence International Core Team, which is mostly people that were related with social contract. And of course, those are the things which we're having in plan. When we talk about purpose, I want to underline what is the purpose of our panel in addressing foundational concepts, conditions, principles, operational and driving principles. First is to create an initial framework for the artificial intelligence international accord. Second principle, second basically purpose is to establish, as I call, democratic alliance for digital governance, which will be focused on implementing and supporting artificial intelligence international accord and the social contract, as I mentioned. The purpose of it is also to design a monitoring system which would observe all abuses and applications of artificial intelligence by private and public entities, and of course to identify notable violations of an emergent artificial intelligence international accord and the social contract. So when it comes to the concept and the content of artificial intelligence international accord, concept is based on reviewing legal frameworks for artificial intelligence and identifying something which we call the essential elements of an international AI legal framework. Second element of that content is defining methods to present abuses, not only by governments and businesses, but all stakeholders in uses of artificial intelligence, of data itself, of data technology, of cyberspace, which includes attacks of the companies, organizations, and individuals on the internet. Among other things is articulation of the norms to manage robotics and cybersecurity, protecting social contract, democratic values, transparency and accountability, but at the same time to ensure equal opportunities across diverse social economic landscapes. And last 2 points are basically supporting the provision of Budapest Convention of Cybercrime, because the majority of the globe accepted it, as well as the EU general directives, and maybe see how they can incorporate basic principles in overall life and work. And finally, sanctioning entities. We have to see who will violate AIIA and or social contract for the AI age. Of course, that includes sanctioning of the governments, of businesses especially, and other actors, especially non-profit actors as NGOs, individuals, academics, and so on. Process that we propose is actually we will prepare a draft framework by our team. We'll discuss and review through our panels by Boston Global Forum with other partners. We'll try to communicate progress with the governments and different international organizations, and see how we can implement on-site operation and assessment in our example project, which is Artificial Intelligence War Society City, or AIWS City. And of course, I will be, as Tuan told me, to have more space to have discussion with you. I will be closing with that everything that we are talking about is basically speaking in the function of the bigger goals that globe is agreeing on, and which is at this moment Agenda 2030, which is Sustainable Development Goals. And if we can talk about major Sustainable Development Goals have major transformative roles, all of them are basically speaking under strong impact and will be under bigger impact of the development and especially the use of artificial intelligence. When I talk about those key transformations for the SDGs, first one is education, inclusion, jobs, and growth. Artificial intelligence and Artificial Intelligence International Accord is actually integral part potentially of all those activities. Health and well-being as a second element. Transformative transformation that is going along the SDGs. Clean energy and industry. That's something which is, these things are going without us talking about the Artificial Intelligence International Accord. The only question is how we will apply international artificial intelligence international accord to these transformations that are already going on, because otherwise those transformations can just unlock themselves and go off. So clean energy and industry is something which is definitely on the agenda. Sustainable food, land use, and ocean is smart cities and transport. And finally, but not less important than anything else, is basically speaking digital technologies and e-governance. And that's where I stop. If you heard something that is some bell 30 seconds ago, that was exactly the bell that was telling me that I am entering 45th minute of our scheduled plan, as Tuan told me that I should go in that direction. So I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be in 45 minutes. And thank you very much. I'm very much open for your comments, questions, and here we are.
Well, can I start?
Oh, definitely. Anastasia, right?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I don't hear you.
I hear you very much. Yes, please. Anastasia, please raise question.
Yes. Yes. I think I have problems and okay, I hope you can hear me. I think currently we are speaking a lot about technology, and as you said, almost everything is possible, and I am able to make smart cities, smart homes, and so on. But for me, the most difficult question is an ethical one, because somebody has to decide what will we do.
I don't know. Am I the only one who doesn't hear Anastasia? Tuan, do you hear Anastasia?
Yes, I hear. I hear
I
the
did.
question.
Hello?
Anastasia, I heard you were questioning the ethics. I agree, and now I hear better. Please, could you?
Yes, I'm sorry. Definitely some technical problems. Everything was perfect first. And now when I start to talk, of course, I love online meetings. Where have I stopped? On the part about okay. So for me, it's the most difficult question is an ethical one because we will be able to do smart cities, smart homes, smart everything. I'm sure, but somebody has to decide what will we do. For example, all these smart cities has to be available for everybody. And how can we prevent a situation when some people who are well educated and rich live in good, smart cities, and the others are outsiders who can't use anything of it, and even maybe are discriminated because they can't use something. For example, we have a problem here in Russia when the pandemic started and education went to Zoom. We found out that we have some villages where they don't have available internet to study online. And it's not only about Russia. I read that in some countries they are already planning what they will do after pandemic because they think that some of their children will not even be able to read because they will miss, they will skip some school years. And another question is what can we do with AI? Because I saw a video some months ago where was a Chinese, if I'm right, woman who was in a virtual reality room, and they created an image of her daughter who passed away. So somebody has to decide is it ethical or not. Like in medicine, we decide that some treatments are not ethical, and for example, cloning is banned. AI gives us many opportunities, of course, but what can we do to prevent harm, especially for vulnerable people, for those who are in difficult living situation because of their economical conditions or because of their some mental problems or family issues? How can we prevent people from living in this virtual reality, not in a real world?
Well, Anastasia, I think that you tackled. I'm very good. You're also a computer scientist, right? You're an engineer.
Yes.
Good.
My
I like.
major is applied mathematics.
It's what?
Applied mathematics and informatics.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Because I like very much when people of your skills, I mean, are thinking in that category. It took me much more years to understand that I should, as a computer scientist, young computer scientist at the time, I got to my PhD, and then I figured out that computer science is more about science and beyond science, and especially beyond computers. So I think that you tackled the real issue, the issue of ethics, because ethics is basically speaking the purpose. Why do we live? What is the purpose of our life? I mean, and technology is actually being able to make our life much richer, much more prosperous. At the same time, this is, as we said, the first technology that basically is jeopardizing that we go in, let's say, in a situation in which we will be so obsessed with technology and capacity that we'll forget the reason why we actually do exist. So I'll give you an example. I mean, we know about the, let's say, autocracy as a model of work, running people, or technocracy. But now we're entering a time in which we may be living in a system of algocracy. in which algorithms will be making decisions. So one thing is if we do make those algorithms, but next stage may be even that we live in artificiocracy, where artificial intelligence is even making algorithms along their own norms and rules. So for example, let me put it this way. What if, for example, if artificial superintelligence would make, if machine learning, reasoning, we are familiar with those facts, what if we create artificial superintelligence that is able to make conclusions based on overall knowledge that we have all over the world in a global knowledge bank, that everything is available. So what if that intelligence makes conclusion that they should treat us the way we treat others? What if that artificial superintelligence, someone with a bigger IQ than ourselves, make a rule that they can treat us the way we treated others? Because, for example, we think as humans that we are most sophisticated species, and we have rights. It is ethical. It is even ethical not only to kill animal for food, but it's ethical to kill it for fun. We call it sport. We call it hunting. In very civilized societies, hunting is nobility sport, okay? So we are actually killing animals because our ethic explanation, because behind it is that we are more superior being than that animal, right? So it's okay. Now, what if artificial intelligence come to the conclusion using our reasoning that they are more superior than us, and they actually have fun with us by hunting us? So that's, I mean, the ultimate threat. But at the same time, we have also a threat that if some of us, before artificial intelligence takes over even us, if some of us decides using the artificial intelligence actually to be running all of us. So we are coming into the very twilight zone in which that's the reason why our social contract movement, I can say that AIWS social contract, we want to create a movement, so to speak, in let's say in symbolic way. Movement in which we are creating awareness that we as a human beings have now to make again a social contract, which we needed back when Enlightenment time. We needed social contract to, let's say, to stabilize all that science from Newton to math, Newton Principia Mathematica to everything, to be our common good. Now, we are now think that exactly the social contract, and that's the reason why Artificial Intelligence International Accord is basically speaking attempt to set up the norms and rules that are ethically based. Ethically in sense of, let's say, global ethics. Of course, we have to respect the diversities. We are all different, but at the same time, we are all the same. But we, as different, have to be having some kind of global ethics as well. Just like I said, as Human Convention of Human Rights is, we have to have that in the context of artificial intelligence. And now we have to I'll come to a little bit, maybe different area, but actually this is substantially what you asked me for. The biggest, as far as I'm concerned, the biggest threat to humanity is something which is called inequality. Inequality, but not only economic inequality, technological inequality, health inequality, political inequality. But we all see that, I mean, economical inequality in between states and inside the states is creating a big tensions in between those states and inside the states. And that inequality, if we transform it and transfer that inequality in artificial intelligence, it will be more dangerous than this. So that I'm sure that Mark Rothenberg is our dear friend who sits probably very close to Tuan, I mean, geographically speaking, in Boston, because he's one of the creators of not only one of the authors of social contract, but Mark is also very well known intellectual individual, and he's running institute, basically speaking, center that's dealing mostly with ethics. And we strongly think that issue that you just put on is the issue that is important. And so what I'm going to give you as an answer, Anastasia, I'm not going to answer your question. As an answer, I'm going to give you, you're right, you tackled the right question. and it will pass time and time and time until we come to the even theoretical answer to a question. Second phase is to come to your answer on your question on very concrete life that we live in. And of course, that's what all this debate about social contract and artificial intelligence international accord is about, making technology and artificial intelligence more beneficiary for humankind, not for someone. Because in the end, I'm sure that if we don't win this battle, it will be our last battle. And I mean, it's nice to agree with a person like Stephen Hawking, because I mean, you play for safe. I mean, because he's officially smart, he's not among us. But I mean, if you agree with Stephen Hawking, I strongly agree with him on this issue of artificial intelligence, even his quantum physics. I mean, that we have to be really, as we said, more robust technology-wise, but beneficiary artificial intelligence, and we have to focus much more on this beneficiary part. And I will, I would suggest you to maybe go to read Aristotle, some nice little books. I mean, because I read 5 years ago. I took Aristotle again to read it with different eyes. As engineer, I was in high school. I had to read Aristotle in my high school because that was type of our education, and I just didn't like it. I mean, it was just, pass the grade and that's it. But when you look at Aristotle today, I mean, what he said, actually, Aristotle knew 3 types of knowledge. One type of knowledge was called episteme, another one was called techne, and third one was pronesis. Episteme is basically speaking what we call as science, okay? Techne is what we call as know-how, make it. But pronesis, when you look at different translation of Aristotle pronesis, basically speaking, pronesis is something we should call wisdom, okay? So what we lack today as a world, we are, I mean, going so fast with episteme. We are going even faster with techne. When it comes to pronesis, with our wisdom as individuals, and especially as society, we are not even close as far as we went with our episteme and techne. So this, what we are talking about, is basically speaking, trying to create some kind of awareness that it is important that we go in using in more understanding each other, and more in pronesis, more in going in that direction. And finally, what they said, sometimes I was asking myself, was it really right decision to even join the political life? But then I was comforting myself with all that anecdote with Albert Einstein, when one of his students in Princeton asked him, "Professor, how come that we as a humanity mastered atom and created such a complex thing as an atomic bomb and atomic energy, and we mastered the atom, but we are not able to master what to do with that thing that we created?" And Einstein answer was very simple: "My dear colleague, it looks like politics is much more complex than atomic physics." So politics is about promises, and more promises, we have more chance to use wisely episteme and techne, science and technology. So that's the reason I'm so glad to see people like you, Anastasia, which are people of strong episteme and techne who like to go in promises area.
Thank you. And thank you for your recommendation, of course.
Do we have time for another question?
Oh, definitely.
Okay, awesome. I would like to say big thanks for your absolutely amazing report and lecture. I think you gave us a lot of useful information and food for our thoughts. So my question will be the next. In terms of small steps that will grant a big result, what could be possible way to find to change a people mindset in terms of politics, because right now we have kind of money-oriented thinking. Like capitalism is like one of the essential part of us, and we definitely need to change it. What could be possible ways to deal with it?
Well, Konstantin, first, thank you very much. I mean, for your comments and for your question, of course. You see, we live in a time in which that's the reason why I insist so much on multi-stakeholder approach. That's the reason why I insist that every voice is first given, and then every voice will be heard. I think that we live in a world in which there are no big or small players. They are just people who are interested in doing something, expressing themselves. And I think more people expressing themselves, more we have chance to make an impact on people who have bigger power than ourselves. I personally do think that I'll give you my personal experience. I was two times prime minister, whatever, in the government, 3 times in the government, 4 times, 5 times in opposition. So I saw a lot of, I was inside in the box and I was outside the box, making pressure on political level people to do change something. I can tell you from my experience and from experience that I share with my colleagues from all over the world. Generally speaking, people who are on top of the pyramid, who are making decisions, we want to make impact on them. We want to make them do changes. They will be, people are in those positions, they make their moves, they make their policies, they make their decisions based on 2 things. One thing is because of their let's say, articulated goals, which are called programs, ideas, whatever. I mean, what they claim that they want to do. So people make a decision, even if they're the best decision makers, presidents, prime ministers, kings, whatever. They make the decision because they have some vision what they want to do. So they do it along that line. But most of the time, people on that position are making decisions because they are pressed, because of the pressure they see from outside and around them. So what I'm trying to say is that most of decision makers are making their decisions very many times because they are pressed to do so. They can be pressed because of the 2 reasons. Because they are sharing someone's hopes, and we give them hope, and we show them what they can do on a positive manner. And second thing is, we create some kind of fear that they have to do is, otherwise it's something will go in the wrong direction. So what I'm trying to say, Konstantin, is I think it is very important to what we are doing with this area of artificial intelligence international accord, what we are doing with artificial intelligence social contract for the age of artificial intelligence. We are first we are trying to create awareness, global awareness of this problem. And I mean, even we are talking now in a small group of us, 10 of us, we are talking about this is also creating awareness. I consider this very important. I was very happy, I mean, when I heard Anastasia and Konstantin your question, because it reassures me that I'm working and thinking along the lines which are relevant to people. So, Konstantin, what we can do is we can just give our voice in every way of that meaning. We have to be passionate about something which we believe in. We have to create awareness of that thing. And my suggestion, I mean, there is one if you want to persuade someone, if you want to persuade decision maker, you can have 3 things. You can tell them you ask them what to do, then you tell them, then you know how you can do it, but then you have to tell them why you're doing it. So my suggestion is that you start with why. You start with why. You try to say to the people who you want to move, even as a leader or to make pressure on someone higher. You have to let's say, have a good why you're doing that. For example, when we talk about artificial intelligence, we have two whys. One why is because it can be beneficiary, but another why is we have to move because it can be damaging. So before you tell people what they should do, you have to mobilize them and motivate them to go in that direction. And the best way to motivate is to give them proper why they should do it. So my suggestion is, I mean, don't try to sell the product. Don't try to sell the product. Try to sell the idea that this product is behind. Try to sell the big picture of that product.
Thank you. Really inspiring.
Thank you, Konstantin. So, Juan, how do we proceed? Do we have
Who else want to raise question? Feel free.
Okay.
We have more time.
Okay, good. Just I'm ready.
Okay, if nobody wants, I can, because I have many questions to say the truth. Maybe it's about ethics too, but not really, I think. It's more about politics. Now politics are discussing the issue and writing some documents and so on, and it's great. But how can we as citizens, as people who somehow will use AI in our lives, can be sure in their decisions? Because personally, I have some feeling like many very clever and respectful people said somewhere and discussed and decided. Don't we need some form of elections maybe about these technologies? Because one time here in Russia, we have in some cities, especially in Moscow, extremely great technologies. State of the art, the best, maybe one of the best in the world. And in some situations, people are not happy with them. For example, in Moscow, we had many arguments about pandemic restrictions, in which many of these new technologies were used. And especially, it was strange because I live in St. Petersburg. It's the second city in Russia, and our pandemic restrictions were much lighter than in Moscow, just because we don't have such technology here. And speaking about smaller towns, it's even more correct. And what can be done by governments, I think, in order to make sure that their decisions are, that their citizens agree with their decisions? And what can do citizens in order to prevent situations when governments will control an AI and use it in the ways that most people won't like at all?
Wow, Anastasia, I knew you were gonna give me the question that requires another lecture. I mean, and there are no doubts. I mean, thank you very much. I mean, of course, I'll just scratch a little bit over it. I think that I'll give you. You see, this technology gives us opportunity and gives us know-how, basically speaking, to organize democratic voting on anything. But having in mind, I mean, we have countries in which almost everyone is capable to get on the internet and have some kind of, we have, let's say, the most advanced countries who have democracy more or less, but they say that they're democracies anyway. So they have a capacity to organize elections on everything. The question is, I mean, is everything for elections that everyone makes vote on? So what are the questions that are for vote. Especially, you see, if you want to have everyone, basically speaking, being able to give its vote. I'm talking about obligatory vote. I'm not talking about voice. I'm more for using technology for creating awareness and sharing the knowledge. And dialogue. I think that the technology has to be first used for dialogue. Dialogue. It's not about voting. It's about dialogue. It's about tolerance in a dialogue. We have to create atmosphere in which we have a dialogue which is with tolerance and respect. At the same time, we have to have dialogue which is about learning. We have to learn the things before we make final decision. But learning is not the end of the process. The end of the process may be understanding, that you understand the thing, but also that you understand others. So then, if you go through process of dialogue, tolerance, learning, and understanding, you can come to a vote by the people who went through this process. Because otherwise, one of the, with all due respect, I mean, I'm giving you my personal opinion from my experience, and maybe it's kind of political, but we know that today the world is basically speaking. I think that the world today is we have confronted two types of leadership. One leadership which is driven by populism. Populism, the best way to be populist is to figure out what do people think and then to tell them what they would like. The question is it the best thing for them to hear what they like to hear? Or what is that? So that's the reason why I think that technology is giving us, for the first time in the history of mankind, platform, know-how, that we can be understanding more each other. And I see this as a major benefit of technology. If you have leaders that are if you have leadership based on populism, if you have leadership which is based on fear, that you only create the fears, they will take us, they will blah, 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 just fear. And if it is leadership based on inequality, which is creating more inequality in order to make bigger division among the people, in order to easier manipulate them. Of course, that leader can be successful, but the question is, what is the end game? What is the result? And if that leadership is based on, let's say, fact that people are standing aside, if a lot of people say, oh, I cannot do nothing, what is my word? I can't change nothing. And of course, in the end, if you have leadership which is based on of ignorance, of not knowing the things and manipulating the facts, then you have, this technology can be very, very powerful for people who are driven by populism, inequality, fear, ignorance, and standing aside. At the same time, if you have another type of leadership, which is based on a vision, that is vision with a purpose, vision that is actually catching, which is attractive for the people, realizing that the good thing cannot come tomorrow. It takes time, but tomorrow will be better. But the vision, if the leadership is based on the values or principles of, if you would say, ethics or right ethics, if values that are talking about shared values, about sharing the future, about sharing the benefits, about sharing the responsibility. And of course, if you are persistent, if you have leadership that is based on persistence, and on the end, if leadership is based on partnership, which includes as many people as possible. And last, most important thing, as far as I'm concerned, you have to believe in what you do. It's very nice to live in a world in which you believe in something, you do what you believe in, and you go for it persistently, which is called passion. You have to have a passion for certain vision, for certain values, to certain people that you want to be going through together. So I think that this technology is giving us a lot of opportunity not to vote, but to, and last, the most important thing is, I think that when it comes to this gaining something, you have to have some kind of direction, which is vision, mission, strategy, and objectives. You have to have certain structure that goes behind it. That's organizational design, management processes, competencies, and so on. So what we do with a social contract, it's kind of a strategy or direction or vision. We talk about structure. We talk about about organizational design, about process that is running this along certain set of values. But the most important thing is the third thing, which is called culture. So we have to align strategy, structure, and culture. Culture is beliefs, values, mindset, attitudes. So we have always to take in consideration these things. Last point, very clear one, is I think that it is most important at this stage that what we are talking about is that we are, if you want to lead the changes, if you want to lead the changes, first step is create awareness and sense of urgency about it. So we have to create awareness about what we are talking about need for articulating social contract, articulating the international norms and rules based on certain ethics and values, and then go for it after catching the big vision. And big vision is to have a world which is much more just than this one, much less unequal like today is, because this technology is also giving us artificial intelligence, and technology itself is giving us chance or driving us into the jeopardy to be living in a more dark world or more sunny world. But that's up to us. More questions, better answers.
Thank you. Very encouraging.
I have for you, Anastasia, a question, and for Konstantin, I have for you too a question. Why did you choose this master program, and what do you expect to get from it? And
Well,
what are your plans? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Talking about vision and leadership.
It's an interesting question. This program is it's a program which is made by my university in Russia and Michael Dukakis University. So I knew about it because my university told me that there is an opportunity to participate. And personally, I think it's very interesting, especially as an opportunity to meet different people, because I sometimes feel like in a bubble, some IT bubble. Most of friends are working in IT. We are sitting on Friday evening and discussing how can we do this task in our job. Let's discuss some new frameworks. And I think this program is an opportunity to hear other people and their point of view on AI, because I think I agree that it's equally important not only to drive technology, but to think about what we do and why we do it. Because technology is great. I know many great computer programmers. Some of my friends, I think, can create something great using AI. But I'm not always sure that we know why we do it. And the more I am in my IT bubble, the more I am in risk to forget about the world outside of it. And that's why I am especially concerned about ethics and availability of AI technologies for everybody, because I know that many technologies are available for me and not available for people really near me. I see queues every month where people are staying in line to pay for their electricity. For the last 50 years, I am doing it online and my family. And I have no idea why they don't do it online. I know that they can. So I think it's very important to discuss it and to constantly control that we can that we understand what the real station is.
Oh, thank you. Konstantin, are you around? Yes, you are.
Yeah, I'm here. I strongly believe that this idea is quite important, and we need to derive it for bigger or more public people and start sharing it, because it's our future and we need to raise awareness anyway. And the best way to understand how we could do it is to get more knowledge about it, how it is done on the world scale. So maybe I hope all of us here to get some ideas and some experience about, like, get your experience, and after it try to think what we could do in our realities.
Well, look, thank you very much. I'll just catch up on the thing that I took a note while Konstantin and Anastasia, you were talking about, reminding me of the questions. I mean, just think about when you were, Anastasia, and you were using the examples of pandemics and technology. I mean, and I think that there are very good surveys and very good surveys that were recently done, especially in some European Union parts of European Union. I had just yesterday, I had one of my master's students who got his final degree, and she made excellent work on actually perception of the technology in pandemics among the people in companies. But one thing which I want to share with you is this technology and what we are talking about, information technology and artificial intelligence especially, already showed us there are so many benefits that were possible to people were not even thinking about those applications of artificial intelligence and technology itself before pandemic, because they were not thinking about pandemic. But I mean, you have so many applications, tracking of the people, actually identifying very quickly people who are potential spreaders of diseases and so on. There are so many applications when we want to vaccine a large amount of people, and when you want to organize them, how to do. I mean, those are all the things that are overnight. Those software little platforms appeared. Smartphones were used by everyone in order to avoid these things. But I'll give you one example. Let's see that, let's say, I won't say 20 years ago, let's say that 10 years ago, this pandemic hit us. What that would mean for educational system. What that would mean for educational system. Majority of the educational systems in the world would simply collapse. Not only in developing and undeveloped countries, but even in developed countries. Because 10 or 15 years, if we got this pandemic in 2000, when Budapest Convention was adopted, if we had, for example, my faculty, we in our business school, I have a few courses that I do teach in from China to United States and some European some parts here in Europe, and I mean, I'm still having these courses and teaching them because of this technology, and I'm visiting your course today because of this technology. But if that would be happening 10 years ago, not talking 20 years ago when Budapest Agreement was adopted, which was basically the fundamental basic pillar for cyber development. If this pandemic happened 20 years ago, the world would be shut down. The majority of the things in the world would be shut down. Educational system would be completely shut down. Majority of the even banks would be shut down. A lot of work that today is possible due to the pandemic, due to technology, is possible. So obviously we're getting in something which is completely new area. Now, what my suggestion is when we talk about, I would just give you some thoughts, food for thoughts about what type of intelligence we are talking about. What is the intelligence that we are using? One is, for example, the contextual intelligence, which is the mind, which is how we understand and apply our knowledge. So that would be very easy to transfer to artificial intelligence. Emotional intelligence, the heart, or how we proceed and integrate our thoughts and feelings and relate to ourselves and to others, that will be a little bit tough. The question is, what if that gets sorted out? Then we have a problem. Then the third intelligence, we could call it the soul or inspired intelligence. Intelligence, how we see a sense of individual and shared purpose, how we see trust and other virtues, I mean, to effect change and act toward the common good. Can artificial intelligence will they create their own soul and their own virtue, or so on? We go back to the basic question of ethics. It's good that engineers think about ethics. And physical is the easiest one. It's the body, how we can cultivate and maintain our personal health and well-being and all those around us to be in position to apply the energy which is required for individual and system transformation. So when we talk about intelligence, contextual, the mind, and physical, the body, that will be the easiest part. But emotional, especially inspired, the heart and the soul, that's something which is still in our hands. And let's keep it in our hands as much as possible. So my suggestion is just to you to make yourself a little bit, let's make exercise. I mean, what are the things that are important in this creating a new world, in the sense of leadership? It's about, I'll give you some words like product. You have to have a product, you have to have plan, you have to be passionate, you have to have persistence, you have to understand that this is a process, you have to have performances, you have to be working with the people, you have to be having in mind potentials with our resources like knowledge, innovation. You have to be talking about the progress that have to go in the right direction. Of course, you have to talk about partnership when it comes to leadership. And finally, if we would, I think I named 10 times something that starts with P. So the 11th P, or the goalkeeper, or the center for, would be principles, values, ethics. So this is actually either since we are, most of us are in Europe, I won't talk about American football, I'll talk in European soccer. American soccer or European football. So principles, values, number one thing. You can call it goalie or you can call it center forward that makes goal. It's irrelevant. Principles, people, potential, progress, partnership, performance, process. You have to have someone who's organizing that as a process. Persistence, don't give up, work. We have to have plan. We have to have a product on the end, and we have to be passionate. So 5 P's. If you have some maybe extra players to walk in, you can have a purpose, which is vision, right? You have to have vision, and finally, but not the smallest one, positive thinking. Be positive. You have to be positive if we want to go in let's say next stage of our game. Of course, we can switch to some other letter from P, but I'll give you enough elements of the leadership. So,
wow, it's nice. Uncountable amount of P elements here.
You get, I think, 13, right? We got 11, plus I gave you 2 extras, right? So you can move them. So we have extra goalie and extra center for if these 2 ones are not so good. So pick up which one. Okay. I think I'm exceeding your planned time. I mean, I really liked it. I see that you're passionate about it. I see that you are positive about it, which is good. I see that you, at the same time, you understand that this is something which we have to go for progress, not to status quo.
Thank you.
Thank you for a very encouraging conversation.
Thank you. Tuan, you're the master of this program.
Yes. Okay, so that is also the time at the end for the lecture. Thank you so much, Mr. Zlatko Lagumziza. We have a wonderful lecture and conversation. And thank for students, and special thank for Natalia. She's a great managing for the program. And we have a question for our students. That is homework for students of the AIWS Leadership Master Program. This is how to make the AI International Accord happen and can convince the leaders, the political leaders and government, consensus and support to have an AI International Accord. Yes, we would like to receive your feedback after 2 weeks. Yeah, you can thinking and discussion in our group, email, or in Telegram. Feel free to chat and discuss. And we would like to receive your feedback in each student one solution and writing. And feel free to write, and not so much format. You can write ideas. Yeah. And thank you so much. Oh, and good afternoon in St. Petersburg and in Bosnia, Sarajevo. Yeah, you are Sarajevo now. Yeah. Thank you all of us, and have a great day. Thanks.
Have a nice rest of the weekend. Enjoy the weekend.
Yeah.
Bye.
Enjoy weekend.
Thank you so much, dear colleagues. Thank you.
Have a nice weekend. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Tuan, I have a last question. Could you help us and could you type our homework in message? Thank you so much.
Yes. Yes.
Thank
that is the 2 week.
Okay. Okay.
They can send, because very important for thinking and solution as a leadership thinking. We would like to encourage them write and think about solution, because the most important, most challenge, that is how convince the leaders and government consensus and with the AI International Accord. So that is you can encourage the students discuss. Yes, they can feel free to discuss in our email group and Telegram group, and also then send their opinion and thinking. Yeah, 2 weeks this feedback from that homework for.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a nice
Goodbye.
day. Goodbye.
Have a nice day.